High School in Parkland, Florida. Fred Guttenberg explained what you're seeing in that photograph this way. Just walked up to Judge Kavanaugh as morning session ended, put out my hand to introduce myself as Jamie Guttenberg's dad. He pulled his hand back, turned his back to me, and walked away. I guess he did not want to deal with the reality of gun violence. Here is the video of that moment, and you will see Fred Guttenberg is the first person to speak to Brett Kavanaugh when he gets out of the witness chair.
Four seconds, 3.
The photograph of Brett Kavanaugh turning his back on Fred Guttenberg went viral almost immediately, and by the time Brett Kavanaugh made his opening remarks, the White House was already issuing statements defending Brett Kavanaugh, turning his back on Fred Guttenberg. And so, I had high hopes for Brett Kavanaugh, high hopes that he would find Fred Guttenberg in the audience and just shake hands with him, say something sympathetic to a grieving father in his opening remarks, perhaps. But he didn't. He could easily have just added a sentence or two. That's the most it would take to his opening remarks. He didn't say a word about Fred Guttenberg or Fred's daughter, Jamie. But he did talk about some other girls. Girls with very bright futures.
For the past 7 years, I've coached my daughter's basketball teams. I love coaching. All the girls I've coached are awesome. And special congratulations to the girls on this year's 6th grade CYO championship team. Anna, Quinn, Kelsey, Shawnee, Chloe, Alex, Ava, Sophia, and Margaret. I love helping the girls grow into confident players. I know that confidence on the basketball court translates into confidence in other aspects of life.
I love everything about that. I love that he loves coaching his daughter's team, and I love that he gave a shout out to them and the other 6th graders on the team. I love everything he said there, and I believe he means every single word of that. I know that confidence on the basketball court translates into confidence in other aspects of life. Not if you don't get to have a life. Not if a mass murderer walks into your school when you're 14 years old and takes your life away. And that's what happened to Jamie Guttenberg. And now her dad goes everywhere he can and reaches his hand out to everyone he can to try to bring sanity to America's gun laws. He did it to me. At a big crowded event in Washington, Fred Guttenberg approached me the same way he approached Brett Kavanaugh today, with that outstretched hand, and he said, "I am Fred Guttenberg. I am the father of Jamie Guttenberg, who was murdered at Parkland." And those words froze me in place, listening to every word that he had to say, marveling that he could compose himself and smile through that unimaginable burden of grief. And today, Fred Guttenberg tried that same approach with the nominee for the Supreme Court of the United States, and the nominee turned his back on him. And then when given a chance to apologize, to clarify, it didn't seem to even cross his mind. And so even though Brett Kavanaugh took no questions today from the senators, we learned more about him in his response to Fred Guttenberg than we will probably learn about Brett Kavanaugh in the rest of the hearings. And joining us now,
that's right,
Fred Guttenberg.
Lawrence, you just gave me my first legitimate laugh of the day. I remember exactly what you're talking about at the March for Our Lives on March 24th. I remember walking up to you, and those exact words that you described are exactly what I said today to Judge Kavanaugh. And when I got to the part about my daughter Jamie was one of the kids murdered in Parkland, was when you see him turn around and move the other way.
And Fred, just as a human experience, I just have to tell you that when I heard those words from you, It was like it was just like a cementing in place. It was like the world. I forgot the world around me. There was nothing else to do except to take in what you had to say. And I would assume that most of the time, with most people in Washington who you approach, who you try to talk to about this, when you identify yourself that way, that they must respond to you, don't they? Most of them.
You know what, Lawrence? They do. And I don't make an effort just to go up to people who I think believe in gun safety. As you said in your open, I go up to everyone. I want to talk to everyone about this because if you agree with me, then we work together. If you don't agree with me, then I hope to change your mind or at least find a place where we can agree because it's in everybody's public safety if that happens. Judge Kavanaugh, does not agree with my positions. And as a dad, I watched him introduce his kids. He has a beautiful family. He seems like an amazing dad, and I'm sure he's a wonderful man. I've never really met him other than the effort to shake his hand. But I know by his public statements, I know by his rulings, that I have reason for concern. And I'll give you an example. We passed gun safety in Florida. It's passing in other states around the country. Everywhere we pass safety, the NRA files a lawsuit. The NRA is right now spending a lot of money to get him selected. And what will eventually happen is one of these lawsuits, maybe it'll be Florida, will end up in front of him. And he will have to judge it. I am concerned that something like raising the age to 21, which we've done in Florida, red flag laws, which we've done in Florida, eliminating bump stocks, which we've done in Florida, before we get to even all the more serious stuff, he would rule unconstitutional. I hope to speak with him as a father and look him in the eye and tell him those few things would have saved my daughter. Not the bump stocks, but raising the age to 21 and red flag laws.
And Fred, was it clear to you that he could hear what you were saying to him?
Oh, listen. I have no doubt. I know my voice. I'm certain he heard my words, and I'm certain when he heard me say, my daughter Janie was murdered in Parkland, that's when he turned.
And Fred, I've been in that hearing room many times, and I absolutely can back you up that anything said from that distance in that situation is easily audible in a situation like that. And I've seen many people engage in conversations in those circumstances many times. And so I'm sorry that it turned out the way it did for you today, and I really appreciate you joining us here tonight, Fred. Really, thank you very much. Fred Guttenberg.
Thank you for having me, Lawrence. Thank you.
Fred Guttenberg gets tonight's last word. The 11th hour with Brian Williams starts now.